And so, my dear ones, we continue in this time together so that you and I can have that sense of well-being, that sense of togetherness, that sense of energy in this moment now. And if it's just in this moment now, that moment is enough to sustain us. For today, we celebrate the incredible and awesome, sovereign, glorious light of the master lover, Jesus. And again, his message is not enough to know the truth and the light in me. What I know, you too can know, and you must know in order to be set free. In order for that tomb of ignorance to roll itself away so that the light, the absolute radiance and divine sovereignty within can be released and revealed in each and every single one of us. Now, how glorious is that? What a great message is that? What a great sharing is that? And the story of the master lover, Jesus, has been proclaimed over and over again by many as the greatest story ever told. What's your story? If somebody was to tell your story, would they call it a great story? Would it be that great story of freedom from the darkness, of separation, non-identification, and the thinking and the feeling that it's all up to me, which keeps me very confined and very narrow in my reach as far as consciousness is concerned? The message is for you and the message is for me. The message today is rising up in truth and living in love. Finally, the message today is to rise up out of the darkness of the tomb, to rise up out of the darkness of ignorance, to rise up out of all the littleness and the smallness and the ailing and the complaining that goes on too much of the time within each and every single one of us. Rising up is what it's all about. And when you and I are on our very last nerve, when we're on our very, very last piece of energy, that is the ideal time to rise up. When it seems impossible to rise up, when we do that, what happens is it's like a heavenly set of wings bear us up, lest we dash ourselves against the darkness of ignorance, the darkness of fear, the darkness of separation. Once we have the willingness to say, yes, I shall arise, and I shall return unto my Father, which is the favorite name that Jesus had for infinite cosmic being. Yes, I shall arise up and return into consciousness, wakefulness, beingness. That's what the story is about today. And you know, how did Jesus become the great wayshore that he was, the great example to us all? Remember, he is an example and he never was meant to be the exception, nor would he think of himself as an exception, because his whole message was, you too can experience what I have experienced. You too can accomplish what I have accomplished. You too can do the great things that I have done. Once we are connected with the Father, the infinite essence of being, the living, running, rising waters of life. That's how it's done. But we stop there, don't we? We just hear, you too can do what I have done, and greater things than these can you do. We don't go on to the next bit. If you too become one with all being and unify yourself and harmonize yourself and move into that poise and peace and equilibrium. What is the quickest path to that self-realization? All scriptures will say the same thing, and certainly the Christian scriptures will. The way is the way of divine love, and the way of divine love is forgiveness. It's the story of Good Friday. It's the story of every good day. Forgiveness. We never forgive because of someone else or something else. We forgive because something within us impels us to release and let go of that which would confine us, that which would terrorize us, that which would keep us small and narrow and conflicted. That's what forgiveness is all about. It is, as I shared on Friday, it is that beautiful state of grace that breathes through us and feels through us compassion and kindness and understanding and peace and poise. Because it's not of ourselves that we can forgive. No way will the egoic mind let go of resentment. It is through the identification with and the recognition of the power of the Christed conscious awareness within ourselves that helps us to do any good thing. It's our identification with it. It's our embracing it and imbibing it. It's not going to happen unless you and I have a close, conscious, connected, continuous, regular contact with our source. And keep identifying with it, and keep getting out of its way so it can do all the work for us by doing it through us. That's how forgiveness happens. Forgiveness. And some people will say, well, what has happened to me is impossible to forgive. That's not the experience of any other person on this planet, maybe. Or maybe it's not the experience of that quantum number of people, which is all it takes in order to keep us all together and open to that possibility. Like, for example, the Amish family whose children were mowed down in a classroom along with their teacher, killed brutally by this individual. And in their mourning and in their grief, they included in that their mercy, their compassion, their kindness for the wife and family of the man who had killed their children. And they visited her, and they let it be known to her that they forgave, and that if there was anything they could do to assist her and her children, they would be there for her and her children. Or, like the wonderful, wonderful Archbishop Tutu, who as soon as apartheid was abolished, found within him the understanding that we are one. So he worked very hard and prayed very deeply to bring the persecutors and the victimized together, to listen to each other, to endeavor to understand what was going on in each other. And it was a long process. But it happened and it took place, and you had forgiveness in abundance being in evidence in that situation. Or like the amazing Mahatma Gandhi, whose assassin, he rises up in dying, he rises up and greets the man with the Namaste statement, the light in me honors the light in you. And then he gives up the ghost, as it is said in scriptures. Oh, if one of us can do it, my dear ones, all of us can do it. Because we must, and why must we sooner or later? For ourselves, for the salvation of our own souls, for the redemption of ourselves, for the saving of ourselves, we must do this. Because otherwise, that weight will torment us. That weight will keep us narrow and conflicted and resentful. It will keep us in the darkness of condemnation and criticism and complaint. And that will never free us to soar. We are like these amazing soaring creatures that are absolutely chained and anchored to the egoic material life. We need to break those chains. If we want to rise up because we can, to rise up because we must. And for that to happen, you and I have to be better than we have been. We have to be more than we have been. We have to be greater than we have been. We have to move into the sovereignty that we are. And that sovereignty is pure, unconditioned love. Unconditional love. That's from whence we gain sovereignty. By living in love. By living in love's light, love's energy, love's raising energy. And that doesn't mean that you and I won't be challenged every turn and twist. Of course we will be. We're living on three-dimensional planet Earth. It's a very dense plane, gloriously lovely and beautiful than it is. It's still a very dense plane as far as consciousness is concerned, because in my Father's house there are many mansions, which means numerous, endless numbers of mansions in consciousness that you and I can achieve. This is a three-dimensional plane. But that doesn't mean that some of us in it can move in and out of all of the dimensions if we're so connected to our source. And we do move in and out of dimensions all the time. We don't ever want to become two-dimensional again, however. We want to be going up, rising up on that scale toward the center of self-realization. So, what is this message going to mean to you? Because whatever it is, it's all about getting up out of inertia, getting up out of ailment, getting up out of complaint, getting up out of whatever it is that bothers us, to rise up out of it. And to do that requires your understanding, my understanding, that I'm not doing this alone, and that I'm not just this individual, separate person from everything and everyone else. I'm not. Once and for all, you and I have to get it and understand that, for heaven's sakes, we're all interconnected, interdependent. We are all interjoined with each other, and there's no getting away from that. We belong to each other belongs to us, and that's the truth. That is the way it is, whether we want to believe it or not. However, if we don't believe it, let's endeavor to. Let's put it to the test. Let's try it out, but you can't fake it. You have to be genuine in it. Let's go about the business of life as though I'm meeting myself everywhere I go. Good, bad, and indifferent. I'm meeting myself everywhere I go. And let me have compassion and patience and kindness with myself and everybody else. Let's try and do that for a week. And if you manage a day, you're miraculous. But even if you manage 5 minutes to begin with, that's wondrous. That's wondrous. I'm everything and everyone is me is the mantra. I'm everything and everyone is me. How would I like to be treated? Well, that's how everybody else I meet and everything else I'm interacting with would like to be treated too. It's simple. There's no great it's not something that is too verbose for us to understand, or too difficult to understand, or too convoluted to understand. You know, love yourself as you would have others love you, and love others as you would have, others love you. It's simple. It's so simple, we miss it. We look for the complex, to self-realize, I have to do this and I have to do that. I have to go on this journey. I have to take this class. I have to do this, engage in that. And so that's all baloney, because there is no path and there is no journey. I am always at home with myself, for good or bad or indifferent. What appears to be a journey is what Jesus was on and realized, that evolutionary transformation that we go through in order to wake up again and self-realize. It's just an evolutionary transforming process, your life and mine. And it doesn't happen in a linear way. It's like this. Sometimes I'm near the center of it, and sometimes I'm way out there into deep outer space. But there's always the golden mean that keeps me attached to the center core of my being, and yours too. Always. But again, don't listen to me. What do I know? I know as much as you know. But I am making the endeavor to be consciously aware that I'm not my mistakes. I am not the nonsense that I get myself into. I am not my forgetfulness. I am not any of that. I am the vessel that houses infinite cosmic being, and all I have to do is get out of its way to let it flow magnificently through me, out into all the pulsations of my being and everything and everyone, and everything and everyone's pulsations of being, of light flowing right back to me. Because what I put out is what comes back, you see. That's the great message of all of the teachers, but my goodness, did Jesus know how to powerfully get it across. And yet, 2,000 years later, we're still endeavoring to self-realize. We're still endeavoring to understand what every great, good person has shared with us. Because why? Because we think we've something else to do. We've something else to have happen. We've something else to realize. Someone else has to come and tell me more, tell me more, tell me, You're just waiting for yourself to wake up. Rise up and say, yes, I shall return unto my Father. Yes, I shall return unto my great, infinite, conscious awareness of being. Yes, by the power and the grace of the one who lives me and is always ready to rise up in and through and by means of me. I can do this. And so I must redeem myself, and I must forgive myself for staying in the narrow confines of the terrible imprisonment of I can't. And to rise up in I can, because I am, and I will. And that must begin right here and right now, that energy. And again, I ask you, when we come together like this, when we listen to these kinds of truths and so on, what is our response? Is the response, and the response cannot be, if you want to grow, oh, that was really nice. I really appreciated that. That was good. If it's any meaning at all to you and to me, there must be a decision to change, to turn something around, to let go of something, to receive in something. There has to be an action step under it all. There really must be. And where does it begin? It begins in mind. It begins in consciousness, because the power of imagination is supreme. Talk to anybody who has proved that. Like the prisoner who was imprisoned for I don't know how many years, and to keep himself from going crazy, he was a golfer. He was an average golfer. He thought about golf all the time. He pictured himself being a real pro and so on. And guess what? When that man was released from prison, he turned out to become a great pro golfer. Power of imagination. And he did that out of desperation. But he was so one with the picture. He was so into the picture. He could see it, he could feel it, he could sense that ball whizzing in the air and hear the sound of it and feel it plopping on the lawn and rolling right over into that cup. Well, you know it. You've known it for a while, most of you. But what have you done with it? How have you used it? And that's what Jesus says. This is what's going to happen when we eventually face ourselves in transition. And it won't be, judgment for us. It'll be questions for us. Well, how have you lived? How have you loved? How did you give? How did you receive? How were you when you were in that experience, you see? Well, how are you now? How are you living? How are you loving? How are you giving? How are you receiving? How are you interacting? How are you with yourself? Because how you are with yourself, you're going to be with others. You cannot give anything other than you are in and of yourself. If you want love, you have to be love. If you want kindness, you have to be kindness. If you want generosity to be a major part of your life in others in regard to you, you must become generosity in yourself. You see, that's how it works. What you are is all you have to give, and what you give is all you can receive from. Oh, that's a sobering thought very often. So yes, we must be more. We must be better. We must be greater than we have been, and we certainly must be greater than the perceived difference that keeps us apart from each other. We must be greater than that, more than that, better than that. We need to start living from our life's highest point of view, highest common denominator, because most of us hang out at the lowest common denominator. And we think that's going to work for us, and we wonder why it doesn't work for us. Well, it doesn't, because it's less than. We want more of and more than. We want no longer to be less than. So what is it going to be for you today? How are you going to rise up in your life today as a result of understanding what resurrection is all about and Easter is all about? It's a good question. Sit with it. Let it saturate you. What's next for me? How will I move on this? What needs to change? What needs to go? What needs to come in? And by the power and the grace of the one within me, I'm ready for it. I'm ready to say yes. I'm ready to open up. I'm ready to take myself and rise up and return to the Father, the essential essence of my being, and behold only unity, harmony, and love. That's today's message. And so, my dear ones, it is. And now, we have that lovely, we have that lovely opportunity to give. And what are we given to? We're given to supporting the legacy of this center, the work of this center, so it can continue in your name to do the good that it has always been engaged in and more. And I thank you for that. So join with me in knowing divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, to prosper all those who give and all those who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love. And so it is. And so it is, my dear ones. You're amazing, and you don't even know the kind of good that you are responsible for, because we are in community, and because we're doing this together and supporting this together, great good is happening by means of each one of you. So I thank you for that. And I thank those of you especially who are doing so much good in the wings, unseen, unheard. I know you're there. I've experienced that you're there. And we delight in you, and we're grateful to you, and we recognize you, and we remember you. And so, dear hearts, at this point now, we are going to have our final blessing in this moment in our time together. And first and foremostly, I'm going to ask Reverend Catherine to come forward, and she is going to share some words with us again. Oh, it's Ode to Joy now. She read them both, apparently. And so before Ode to Joy is what we're going to move out into the rest of our day in, I want you to know that life depends on you, and that you are the one that has been called to make the difference. You are loved, you are cherished, you are prayed up, We think of you all the time and we're here for you, but we cannot be a help if we don't know how to help you. Stay connected and stay in touch. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of this glorious day and celebrate it by means of honoring the presence within yourself and everything and everyone you meet today. And Andy now is going to play us out with Ode to Joy. And I want to thank everybody in the room, all few of us, Reverend Catherine and Tracy and Donna and Alex and Melissa and Andy, and for all of their devotion and dedication, we're very grateful. So now, join us all in that great Ode to Joy. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great, good week, and make somebody smile every day.